Hello guys, welcome to a new video on Tower of God New World. And in this video, I'm going to give you my first impression on David and Hugo. We're going to start with the SSR unit, so here we are with David. This guy is a purple SSR support unit and has most of the purple SSR units. He is pretty good. I think the developers cannot really make a bad purple SSR unit lately. They are all good. Purple has the best SSR roster in the entire game. David is pretty solid. I will say I'm not disappointed because I didn't want this guy to be good or great, let's say, because he is good. He has a really solid kit. He's more of a mix between Bam, and Nare, I would say, but he's not too exceptional. He doesn't feel like he has a place in any team at the moment. He can definitely be used in many of them, but he's not like you want him as a unit in any team at the moment. We'll see in the future. I will give you my ideas in a bit after we finish talking about his kit. But yeah, he's definitely solid. He has a few shortcomings, so he doesn't have any kind of crowd control. Not a huge problem for purple because many purple SSR units have a lot of crowd control, so that's okay. And it's also good if you're facing a unit like Blue Urek, so you're not going to heal him for nothing. So definitely a plus. He doesn't have any kind of debuffs to apply to the enemies, so it doesn't decrease their swiftness, doesn't decrease their defense, nothing like that, just none, no debuffs. He still has a utility portion to the kit, so it decreases the enemy energy, but it doesn't apply debuffs. That's one thing. All it does is just buff your allies and has some utility. Utility is energy recovery. It recovers that in two ways. The first one is the same as BAM. He has an AoE on the passive every 5 seconds. Is going to give 150 energy, slightly less than BAM, but still, I would say good enough for most use cases. He also has energy decrease that I just mentioned on basic attacks when an active skill is active, and is going to decrease the energy by 80 every basic attack. Is not that great. It is still something, but it is single target and not that insane, so whatever. It's there, but you're not going to notice it that much. The other utility that he has is a debuff removal that is AoE with his special move, and also a debuff immunity for your team for a duration. So really, really good value there. And yeah, that's all the utility provides. If you look at the buffs, he has a few things. A couple of them are locked behind Revolution. With the Revolution 4 is going to provide physical pierce to allies buffed by the special move. So that's one thing, and is probably also the most useless thing he has in the kit, because like purple only has Oakin and Vivi as physical damage dealers, and they're only good in the early stages of the game. You're not really going to use them later on, so that's kind of wasted for purple. Obviously, you can use him with a unit like Dawon, so that could still work, but it's not really that insane of a buff anyway. This leads me to think that Hell Joe is going to deal physical damage, and also looking at the way this kit works, like it's similar to BAM, so it's going to buff ranged units the most. I also think El Joe is going to be a ranged unit. I think El Joe is going to be purple, and I think it's going to be sort of a mage. So all of that could mean David will be a pretty good support for El Joe, but this is just my speculation. Don't take it too hard, just ignore it. So yeah, that being said, there is this physical pierce increase on the Revolution 4. For Revolution 5, is going to give to the units that it provides energy to with the passive, so the AoE buff is also going to give the attack increase and defense increase. Max 5 stacks, and every stack is 30%, so up to 150% attack and defense. Unfortunately, they can be removed, so that's a bit annoying, but still, I think it's a really solid buff to have. If the enemies don't have buff removals, that's really, really good. Then he also has two remaining things in the base kit. So what I just mentioned is Revolution. In the base kit, he only has two buffs. The first one is to the highest attack unit or ally, and is going to give them 200 energy. It's fine, not too insane, half the amount that Nare gives. And then he's also going to give them a skill attack coefficient increase by 100 at level 5, and it's going to last, I think, 10 seconds or so. This is pretty solid if your like highest attack unit has multi hits, like for example a white or other units. That's going to be pretty good because the skill coefficient increase is going to multiply its value. Overall, it is a nice increase to have, not too insane though. And then he also has on the special move for all allies that are within the zone, is going to give an attack increase when that ally is using the special move. This is just a 120%, so it's less than what Nare provides, but it is on an AoE, so it affects more units. Could be beneficial if you have more than 2 attack scaling DPS units. It is unlikely, but it could happen. So in that scenario, it's better than an array, but in other scenarios, not really. So overall, this guy doesn't have any like insane utility that you say, okay, this guy is a mass pool. He's solid, he's good, definitely. He's not like he's a worthless unit. I don't think you necessarily have to pull for him unless you are in some of the use cases I mentioned. Maybe you're still using VV or something. You could run him. You want some sort of buff to your Dawn. You could use him. He's not going to be too insane, but he's still something. So yeah, in those scenarios, you could pull for him for now. It doesn't feel like a necessary unit. But I will test him more. I will try him in more compositions, and I might change my idea before the card review. I would still say, even though I'm saying he's not like a mass pool, he's definitely a solid unit. So if you want to go for him, no problem. Is still going to be valuable also in the future. In terms of ignition weapon, you just run Barry on him. You don't need to run anything else. Raflazer could be okay, but the uptime on the special move is already nice. You don't really care about the additional energy. And the survivability that Barry provides is just so much higher that you don't really care about running anything else. So that's more or less a brief first impression on David. Now let's move on to Hugo. Now, Hugo is a lot more interesting. I would say I was not expecting them to make Hugo this good, and I'm a bit scared for Heljo. I don't know which of the two is going to be more valuable, but in a second I will mention also whether I think you should pull or not for this unit. First, let's quickly go over what Hugo does and why I'm saying that she's actually pretty good. I will mention first that there are a few different use cases for her. So if you are below 400 to 450 deficit, then Hugo can act as a carry. And if you are around 350 to 300, she can act as a solo carry. So you can just have her in the team, no supports, no other units, just one unit, and she's going to win on her own against a lot of annoying teams. Like Blue Work is not a problem, Tank Hats is not a problem, Garam is not a problem. There are units that are like a bit tricky, like Anniversary Evo is not the easiest to deal with, at least from my experience, and also some others. Uh, Also, Revolution Bomb is a bit annoying because he has a lot of multi hits, so could get annoying, but definitely doable. The good thing is that even if you find annoying enemies, with the fact that she can just run, like she doesn't need a team, means that you can also have 4 slots that you can use to just run whatever unit will help you to counter a specific enemy. So that's definitely good for versatility. Really, really good unit. So below 400, 450 deficit, she can carry. Definitely nice. She doesn't have too high requirements. You don't need max cooldown reduction node from my testing so far. I don't know how much swiftness you need at that point. I had 120 for most of my testing and I never had a problem. If you have maybe less than 110, could be problematic. So at that point, you might need either a Belda or max cooldown reduction. But I can guarantee for 120 swiftness, no issues whatsoever. So that's really, really good. Which means Revolution investment is not that great. You don't need Albelda, you don't need any support whatsoever. In terms of dupes, 0 dupes, she will be extremely bad. Like the uptime on the shield is very, very low, and I don't like it. Just worthless, basically. 3 red, on the other hand, is already, I don't want to say max potential, because if you are using her as a carry, you definitely need Revolution 4, Revolution 5. If not for the upgrades that are still quite good, but also for the sub nodes that for assassins are really, really insane. So that's something we're going to mention in a second. We're also going to go over the revolution investment. But yeah, 3 red, she can already do her job. If you are above 450 deficit, 3 red is probably all you need, because survivability wise, she will be fine, and utility wise, she will provide it anyway. Now, in terms of utility, what does she provide to the team? Other than just potentially infinite tanking, because she cannot die, basically. But what she does is she can stun and knock back enemies, but that is just minor. It's only from one active skill. The rest of the kit doesn't have any sort of crowd control. But what she does is she removes buffs on an AoE and also prevents enemies from getting stat buffs. So they cannot get additional evasion, swiftness, attack, defense, whatever. For a certain duration, all buffs will be blocked. So that's really, really good. You can basically have a 100% uptime on that, I think. So pretty good. Then she's also going to decrease enemy attack and defense. Now, for this one, I have to quickly mention one thing. We see here, for example, in this active skill, she has a 40% attack and defense steal that cannot be removed. But here we read steal limit. This 500% caster attack and defense only applies to the increase to your own stats, so to Hugo's stats. This does not cap the amount that you can decrease from the enemy. So here, if it says 40%, that's going to be 40% decrease, period. Then maybe you're going to get less than 40% increase in your stat. That doesn't matter, that's going to be capped. But the decrease on the enemy is not capped. Same thing applies to the special move, also has the same kind of limit. So don't worry about that. This is not going to apply to how much you can decrease on the enemies. So the debuffs she provides are still quite good if you're running an attack scaler. So really, really solid. And yeah, other than attack and defense increase, buff block, there isn't much else she does. She also applies here a damage taken increase on the enemy, only 40%. Not too major, but it is still a good multiplier on top. So definitely nice. And yeah, that's basically all her kit does. Now to explain why she's actually so good. At the start of the battle, well, we have to read the passive basically. At the start of the battle, she's going to recognize an enemy with the highest attack as the luxury item, and is going to select them as the target. Nobody can tell her to attack anyone else. And this also applies to Fascinate, that Fascinate is a command skill. So they cannot tell her to attack someone else. She will always be on the target, which is really good. And also, it's really important when the target dies, she's going to select a new one. Every time she uses a skill, this is a bit worded like weirdly, but every time she uses an active skill or the special move, she's going to create a luxury shield with a max durability of 6, up to 10 with the exclusive equipment, so let's say 10. And the duration is 6 seconds at level 1, which is really bad, and 10 seconds at level 5, really good. This is going to be up all the time. And whenever she takes damage from an enemy that is not the selected target, then nothing is going to happen. The damage is going to be nullified, but you're still going to be CC'd, which is important for ignition weapon. We're going to say that in a second. And whenever the luxury item or enemy is going to attack her, then the durability is going to be decreased by 1, but the damage is still going to be absorbed. So unless the enemy has multi-hits, like the target, nothing is going to happen. Her survivability is going to be insane. So absolutely amazing, amazing unit. And yeah, that's most of her kit. Survivability wise, no issues whatsoever. Let me quickly go over the ignition weapon so that we also talk about how to build her. I think the best ignition weapon set for her is going to be Alocasia for a simple reason. Alocasia is going to give you the 40% increased evasion against basic attacks. Basic attacks count towards decreasing the durability of her shield, so that's going to be really good. Like only one unit can target you, and you will have 40% increased evasion against basic attacks, which will reduce the frequency at which you lose the durability stacks. So I think this is really a valuable set. We don't care about the physical pierce increase. She has so much physical pierce, we don't really give a shit. And also the additional evasion is nice, but you can lose it as long as an enemy has a buff removal. You've lost it. So the most important thing is only this 40% increased evasion against basic attacks. Really, really good. And I think it's probably the best set But there is a condition. I mentioned before that crowd controls are annoying, and you definitely want to run effect resistance dot 4. This will give you like super easy life against most enemies. They will throw CCs at you, but you will just dodge them, so you don't give a shit. Really, really important, way better than going crit damage. You could go crit damage if you decide to run Rafflesia, which I think is the second best set you can run on her. But even then, I would still probably run effect resistance. So it's kind of up to you. With Rafflesia, you will lose more stacks because of basic attacks. But yeah, it kind of depends. I think it's the second best set. Do not run Bari. She's not supposed to lose HP at all. So when that happens, she's dead, but it's fair, and you will just retry. And the next time, she probably won't lose HP. So Bari, worthless. Other, like L, doesn't work because she's still taking 1 damage when the damage is nullified. So L would be stopped. Makes no sense. And other sets are not really that great. You don't need resistances whatsoever. Let me show you my stats on her. Right now, I changed my tree essence, so I increased my swiftness to 132. I have no physical resistance whatsoever. A bit of magic resistance, but it's the same as having 0, so it doesn't matter. 86% physical pierce, just because there is really nothing better to run. She has 212 crit damage, 105 crit rate. That's coming mostly from the Revolution. And she has 292 effect hit. That's coming from Revolution. And 351 effect resistance. This is coming mainly from Ignition Weapon. So really, really solid stats. This is the most important one, I would say. The rest is just whatever. Also, swiftness is really important. Otherwise, the uptime on the shield is going to be a bit low. So that's all you need to care about. And yeah, that's more or less the ignition weapon build. Now I already mentioned Revolution. Let's quickly talk about the Revolution as well. This one is worthless. I just dumped some point, but I realized afterwards I made a mistake because she's not losing HP, so you don't need lifesteal. Pretty simple, so don't do that. Worthless. Effect hit, I mainly upgraded it because it's cheap and it was going to improve my archive. So that's the only reason. You don't really need it that much. She has okay debuffs, like the attack and defense decrease are pretty good. So you definitely want some. But I would say 3, 4, 5 points are enough for adventure. So that's enough. Accuracy, only if you need accuracy. As simple as that, like as usual. Only level that one up if you actually have a need for additional accuracy. The most important nodes are just attack, really good to steal attack from the enemy so that you can deal more damage, crit damage, and crit rate. This only applies if you're using Hugo as a carry. Otherwise, totally worthless. You can just skip it, and for utility alone, just run effect hit and accuracy, and you're done. Max cooldown reduction will definitely help, but I will say it's not necessary. I'm still not using it. There is really no reason to do that. You potentially could, I think, if you start facing the floors with the swiftness debuff after the 135 floor, probably you will need either Albelda or max cooldown reduction for Hugo to solo. But yeah, I would probably upgrade it once I reach another floor with that debuff. But for now, I don't think it's necessary. I'd rather save my resources. The defense increase one, I mentioned that like your defense and the cap doesn't apply to steal, like to decreasing the enemy defense. So this is totally irrelevant. She doesn't care about defense to survive more. She just cares about her own shield. So this node entirely worthless. And that's all I wanted to mention for Revolution. Nothing much. I think this is more or less already a review for her. But no, I will definitely test her more and give you more information during the character review. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I changed the format a little bit compared to the previous first impressions. As you might have noticed, I tried to provide more information and make it more sort of a discussion or conversation instead of making it going over the kit and reading it, blah, 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 kind of useless. So let me know in the comments how you feel about this change, if it makes sense for you or not. And now, one last thing before I close the video. I wanted to mention whether you should go for Hugo or not. Now, this is quite a sensible topic. It depends a lot on your resources. I will say, in general, as a rule of thumb, you don't want to invest on an SSR Plus unit unless you can get them to a certain specific threshold. For Hugo, that threshold and power spike would be 3 red. Anything below 3 red is kinda meh, kinda worthless. So I will say, unless you have at least 400 tickets that will kind of guarantee you a 3 red Hugo, you shouldn't even consider pulling for Hugo. If you have around 600 tickets, that's enough for a Rainbow 5. But again, if you only have 600, it's quite risky to go for this unit instead of saving up for next super broken units, Family Head that most free-to-play players should go for, or Collab if you're counting your Suspendium in the black market ticket count. If you're only counting the black market tickets, then that doesn't apply, obviously, because you can only pull on with Suspendium on the collab, just as an information. So yeah, like always pay attention to how many tickets you have. If you only have 600, I would say wait for the kit reveal for Hell Joe, and afterwards we can kind of see if Hell Joe has enough chances of being better than Hugo, in which case you could potentially skip Hugo, or yeah, that's kind of the use case. If you have like more than 1500 tickets already, you could invest in Hugo. You would have enough time in the like in these following months to save up before the next Family Head, which should come around June, July, we would expect. So again, it's all kind of based on how much you can save up before those big events. She's definitely a unit that's worth it, really good. We can already say that. Amazing unit. It's just, again, if you are free to play, it's really, really tricky. You have to be super careful when you invest on any kind of banner, because anniversaries will have the most value most of the times, and especially also the Family Head banners. For your Suspendium, you have different good events, but collab will also be a really good way to max out SSR Plus units for very, very cheap. So there is also that variable. So again, make your own considerations, but at the very least, if you decide to go for an SSR Plus unit also in the future, consider if you can get them to, at the very least, the power spike. Pulling for an SSR Plus unit and getting them to 2 blue will not do anything for your account, unless there are some specific SSR Plus units, but we don't care about like specific use cases. This is just a generic rule. Always pay attention to the power spike and make sure you have enough resources to get there. And that also, investing in that unit is not going to have an impact on getting future units. It's really difficult. I wouldn't want to be in a free-to-play player shoes. So yeah, just try to do your best. This is not a competition. This is not a very competitive game. You can just chill, take your time, save up, pull the right units. Even if you slow down in adventure progression, it doesn't matter. There is no competition whatsoever. To compete in this game, you basically have to whale. Free-to-play players will just have to enjoy the game, take your own time, and that's it. So I'm sorry for this last part, but I think it was important to mention it. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about this whole video, if you have any other considerations. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!